All right, looks like we are live. Sandy, thank you for joining me here on, the YouTube channel. This is one of the first interviews I've recorded, so it's great to be here with you.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
So for, people watching this that don't know who you or I am, maybe I'll just give a brief introduction. You are a somatic experiencing practitioner, and I had the pleasure of meeting you 8 years ago now, I guess in 2012. So your experience ranges from somatic experiencing, you're a trauma-informed coach, nervous system educator, and author of the book Thriving in Chaos, which has been out for a few years. And I believe that is your first book. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Thriving in Chaos, and maybe as a high level, what that book focuses on?
Yeah, through my training and somatic training, it changed my life. To be quite honest, I'd studied a lot of different things and gone down a lot of paths on my own personal healing journey, and I started to feel like I was passionate about helping myself get better. So the tools that I found from the somatic practice and from other practices I had, it felt like it wanted to be born in some sort of form because I was constantly teaching and sharing and writing and telling people. So it just kind of came together in a book that of things that I use all the time to sort of boost my energy or clear my focus or help settle myself or calm myself. So it's just like this little resource manual of all sorts of things to help with all of that and ultimately increase your confidence. I feel like when we can kind of get it together, when we understand what's going on inside and we can help support that, then we can kind of go out and be better at what we're doing, whatever that is, whatever we're pursuing. So it was quite the deal writing a book. I'm not sure I'm ready to write another one yet, but I'm really glad that it's out there.
Well, I'm glad you did it. The title Thriving in Chaos seems uh, more
Yeah,
appropriate now than ever, if it
right?
already wasn't extremely useful.
Pretty timely. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, hey?
yeah. And I've had the pleasure of working with you one-on-one and benefiting from your experience and some of the tools and techniques that you just mentioned. So it'd be cool today in our conversation at some point to maybe share something with the people watching and give them something that they can practically implement when they're feeling stressed or when they want to connect to themselves or have a sense of relief. So before we dive into all things life and nervous system and coronavirus and dealing with high pressure situations, I'll just mention briefly for those who don't know me, my name is Nick Solaczek, and over the past 5 years, I've been involved with an organization called the Samurai Brotherhood, doing men's work and men's retreats, men's events. And that's led me to start facilitating one-on-one sessions with men and women, really focused on quality of relationship, romantic relationship. But our relationship extends to all things, our relationship to ourselves, really, and relationship to our work and to life and to family. And it's been an extremely rewarding process. And so I wanted to talk with Sandy today because she's been really insightful to me as a guide, but also to many people that I know. And I think that she has a lot to offer. So today, Sandy, thanks for joining me. And I think one of the first things that when we connected, so we were talking about was coronavirus, COVID-19 existing within a pandemic, this interesting layer that's kind of put on top of already sometimes a stressful and chaotic environment with the challenges of the modern world. And I think that what would be really cool is for you to speak to that a little bit through the lens of your teaching and your life experience in terms of what is going on, because I've seen a lot of clients struggling with isolation and, that lack of co-regulation that we get from just being with people. You smile and say hello and touch them and give them a hug. And I think without that awareness of this sort of fundamental thing that we need, it can be confusing sometimes as to why we feel maybe overwhelmed or why we feel like we struggle with isolation. It's
Mm.
almost like people can be really hard on themselves that I should handle this better or it shouldn't be so tough or
Mm.
um, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because it's going to kind of be the white elephant in the room if we don't, right? I mean, it's just this pervasive thing that's affecting us all in more than one way in our lives. And I think the biggest thing that I'd like to mention about it is that it's really put us into a high state of vigilance. So when we're feeling stressed and when our nervous system is overwhelmed just from daily life, we tend to be activated, like a little bit buzzy. We can feel maybe the adrenaline, the anxiety, or sometimes it can actually overwhelm us and sort of shut us down a bit. Um, but in any of those cases, just the particular qualities of a pandemic and something that's out there, something that we might sense that we're in battle towards, and just this invisible bad guy, it does activate our nervous system in a particular way where it does create a vigilance within us, right? So, and it's not something that we're consciously doing. It's just, you can't help but step outside and see somebody in a mask and go, oh, right. And have this little bit of, you can even see me go like that, right? Just from our own experience of being in the world. So it's a self-protective thing. And it's a very reptilian wiring that we have going on inside of us. And, but usually when we do get activated and when we do get sort of vigilant, or we might feel it as uptight, we get to de-escalate or come down or calm down at some point. Our nervous system ideally likes to cycle, and with everything going on right now, there's not much sort of down regulation. Like, we don't ever, most of us, really switch off and get that the vigilance off and calm down, and to a good enough level where we kind of, oh yeah, here I am, I'm refocused, I'm back. And I mean, some of us can and really work on, but I feel like it is almost something that we have to make conscious work right now of. So like, this is our job. I feel like my job looking after myself is like, how can I get my nervous system switched off or calmed down? And it's not going to just happen on its own. So it's really something that, if we want to look after ourselves, and we talk about self-care and, being kind to ourselves or whatever we do in our downtime, I think it's just imperative that it involves our nervous system. So learning the nuances to be able to switch the nervous system off so we can actually feel the shoulders drop or the breath come back, or those types of little bit of regulation come back. And then we actually really do feel it, that, oh yeah, I am back. How do I know I'm back? Well, I can see around me again. So I'd like to do one right now if you want to try. It's just one of my favorites to help switch that vigilance off. And it's simply just turning the head a little bit in one direction. Doesn't have to go that far. So you're looking with your eyes and you're turning your head, and then you come around and look in the other direction. Nice slow movement. Come to the middle and just slowly look down. And then slowly look up. I'm hoping whoever's watching can just follow along. And then just stay looking up for a couple of breaths here, checking out the ceiling. And then come back and settle, and just say to yourself, I'm here. I'm here. What did you notice doing that?
I noticed a sense of just calm presence. Uh, Just an attunement to just, right here. I'm here in this present moment, even without the words. Just, okay, I'm here in the room, walls of the room.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's okay. Sense of groundedness. Um, and what's interesting is, as I looked around with sort of you giving the prompts, all of a sudden I brought back an attunement to my breath.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of felt a big inhale,
Nice. Yeah.
big exhale.
Yeah. So doing an exercise like this, it's always nice to come back and go, oh yeah, I'm, sensing that you most likely would feel a little bit calmer, but like, how do I know that? And those types of questions can help you become more aware of, oh, well, my shoulders dropped and I took a breath and I actually notice the things on the wall and I hear a car drive by. So those types of things are helping me to realize that something's changed, especially anything that softens in the body. And especially in terms of like relationship and dating and going back to that subject, and even just attuning to other people now, which is going to be different because of this, the COVID awareness that's out there. You can pretty much bet that that vigilance, that what was present there before we kind of did that exercise, that little bit of that tension, that it's a sense of scanning, it's like your nervous system checking for danger, is just going to always be showing up. When you're outside, say if you're showing up on a date, if you're meeting another person, chances are there's going to be a level of vigilance going on depending upon how charged that situation is, right? So if somebody's on a first date, just that little bit of heightened anxiety is going to create that vigilance. Going out into a situation where a store where everybody's wearing masks is just going to create some vigilance, some sense of threat. So it's not necessarily conscious sense of threat, but it's a nervous system going, holy, there's something out there, right? And so the more self-aware we can become, the more curious we can become. I like using the word curious because I feel like it's a compassionate word. So if we can stay curious about what's happening inside, like, wow, I'm heading out the door on my date and my breath is getting shallow and my stomach is in knots, those types of things. So we're staying away from the dialogue up here about, oh, what if I say something wrong, or how do I look? We're just kind of taking it down into the body and going like, wow, what do I notice? I'm noticing this is happening here. It keeps us out of the story of it, which is helpful. And it also helps us just track what's going on. And sometimes just noticing like, wow, my breath is shallow. You could put a hand there and just notice what changes with your hand there, and then you'll sense that settling. And doing something like this, say even in your car before going out, out anywhere where you're feeling like that escalation might be there, is really helpful. And also even that exercise we just did, if you're just before you are, say, going to go into a store or meet someone or have a stressful situation, just doing that little bit of just turning, there's no story behind this, or just turning this way and noticing that there, just that little bit of that exercise. Because what's happening is, when we scan, our eyes are telling our brain that we're safe. So it's like, oh yeah, I'm just here. It helps us tune into our body a little bit more and connect in. So all of that is what switches that vigilance to a lower level. Off would be nice, but I'm not sure we'll get it right off these days. But even something like that, being a little bit proactive when we're going out and we're just able to notice what's happening inside, try a little exercise like that, and then your interface with that person with less vigilance is going to be different.
Mm. One of the things that strikes me as interesting about the techniques that you talk about, the ones that I've learned from you, is that they're very simple. And there are a lot of modalities out of there, modalities in the world, breath techniques and, 30-minute processes and, hour meditations. And there's different teachings that just work for different people. But the things I get from you are just very simple, and they don't take very long. They're not, really intense physical exertions. And I think that sort of, to me, in my experience, comes as a bit of a relief that I don't need to take 2 hours to necessarily ground myself. And that actually this could be a daily practice, that in a moment, hey, 20 seconds, check in with myself, take a breath, look around the room, which is very different than some of the other philosophies about, you got to do this, you got to, some of that is pertaining to hustle culture, this acting out of deficiency. I've got to do all these things to kind of, my morning routine is 4 hours, and
Yeah,
so on.
I know.
So I just really think that's beautiful, and it's incredible how useful these simple techniques are. It strikes me as kind of fascinating.
Well, I think you speak to a good point there, because I think we're trying so hard. We really want to do better and we want to feel better, especially mental health these days. So we can kind of go down the rabbit hole of, wow, this big program, or, sitting still for, maybe if I sit still and do this for an hour instead of 20 minutes, then it will help me even more. And it can actually work the other way. When we have a really overwhelmed nervous system, even tuning into the body can be pretty overwhelming experience, because the body's so tense, right? So there's a lot of charge going on. So really simple, short exercises, in somatic language, it's called titrated, like very small, of going in and noticing and then coming back out, and tuning in is actually far more effective, because if we're and even closing our eyes and meditating, if again the body's an overwhelming place, we're just kind of going to check out. We can actually just kind of dissociate while we're meditating, and we can think we're in a good place for a long, long time, but we're actually really out of our bodies, and it's not effective. It's not helping us to do that deregulation. So, simple exercises, especially exercises with the eyes open, because this is where we live, right? So I mean, not that there isn't a place for meditation and closing the eyes, for sure, but exercises that do involve us being able to orient to where we are really helpful, because most of the time we aren't terribly present. We're here, but we're not really present to where we are. So when our nervous system calms down, we're able to take in more colors and what's going on out there, and sounds, and like I say, this is where we live, so this is where we want to learn to thrive, right? So it's a different way in. And I feel like the analogy of a helium balloon with too much air, I kind of feel like that's what we are these days. And that these little exercises, these little titrated bits of stopping, interrupting what's going on, just noticing, and then just for even like a minute, just like a little air out of that helium balloon. And then, so overall, it's just like gently letting the air out, which is much more, it's easier on our nervous systems as well to do these titrated little responses. And they make a difference. They do add up over time. When we do these, again, we have to be, we've got to somehow remember to do them. Because when we are that overwhelmed and life is so stressful, it's not going to be our default to go, oh, I should stop and look around. We're just not going to do that, right? So I find more the practice, or the thing that we have to find a way for, is just that, how can I remind myself, literally, how can I remember or find ways in my day to remind myself to just sit and do just a couple little things, and that can make a big difference, because that's the preventative medicine. You can see that's that little bit of helium out of the balloon, but we're not going to naturally default to that. It's more like, okay, so if you set aside time in the morning and the evening for, these big practices, how about little, 1 minute beeps on your phone that tells you to just like look up, to just notice your breath. Don't change it. Just notice it. Like, oh, I am breathing. Right. How is my breath right here in this moment? So let's just do that. Let's just pause for a second again and do that. And putting your hand on your chest makes that contact with the body. And breath is a curious thing. And a lot of times with breath work, and those practices are really helpful, but we're also putting an agenda on the breath. So sometimes it's very, it's nice to be curious again about how breath is in the moment, because it's a reflection of how we're doing. So if it's tense and shallow, we're just being curious about that. It's like, wow, look at my breath here. So instead of trying to override it and push a big breath in there, like, let's take a big breath. Well, how about just being curious about how it is right now? And then by staying curious, a lot of times a little will just come on its own. So a very organic regulation of the breath will come, rather than overriding with a big breath. Yeah.
Yeah, I think these techniques are extremely useful for all humans. Um, Definitely, for facilitators as well to be implementing them in session. One of the things I'm thinking about right now is you are a performance coach, also working with artists and other high performers and speakers and people on the public stage. And in that forum, I think about myself sometimes where I've been in roles in a public space, presenting, selling, go, 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 very kind of A-type environment, and how that relates to maybe a state of vigilance. This maybe sense of always being on or always kind of having a defense or what strategizing or having to, move through an environment, like hacking your way through the jungle in a way. And so there's a lot there, what I just said, but I'm curious about how that long-term state of vigilance or that maybe sense of being just really, really activated over a long period of time and not taking a breath, not tuning into yourself, how that relates to what you said, so preventative medicine, like how that relates to chronic illness or pain, and why is it actually so important for people and even high performers, to tune in and check in and consider using some of these techniques to be maybe more efficient, more insightful.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think, overriding that state of overriding is something that we've developed. And, we're pretty complex beings as humans, right? So we can actually learn to overcome great dysregulation in our nervous system from trauma when we were young, or car accidents or things that have happened, and sort of unresolved trauma. They all kind of hang up like in little incompletes in our nervous system and in our bodies. So and yet we still have to pay bills and go to work and engage with other people. So we learn how to adapt very unconsciously. We figure out our way so that we can still perform at the things we have to do, and we're doing the best job that we can that are within the nervous system's capacity. But a lot of times we're really not, for lack of a better phrase, our best selves, right? We're really not as present, as connected as we could be in that sense, right? So all of that, I feel like, kind of shows up first, and then we're in there somewhere, right? So I feel
Mm.
like these exercises help to shift it around, to bring more of us out, so that where that kind of dysregulation, the vigilance, the buzz of anxiety isn't showing up first, isn't kind of what rules. So, I mean, it's not like we're going to completely overtake that, but it's just kind of a dance with it in a way, if that makes sense, right? So, no, go ahead.
Curious if there are things that simple things that you might define uh, as vigilance. So in the relationship world, people say, you got to look out for the red flags. They got to look out for the red flags, look for green flags, and also potential red flags. So in terms of the state of vigilance, are there, certainly chronic pain and like panic attacks, some of the things in the extremes, but are there things that people might look out for, or start paying attention to notice, that they're in a state of vigilance, or that they might be constantly in the state of override?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think one of the biggest things is when your brain is just going off, right? So when that voice in your head is in distress and paranoid and bizarre thoughts, and things are just like going on up here that are like, holy, it's taking all of your effort to manage the fear, the distortions, the crazy stories. You can pretty much bet that if the brain is kind of going off like this, that there's a whole lot going on in the nervous system. Like
Hmm.
it just goes hand in hand. So, and that's, one of the reasons why it's so hard to like stop and get to the nervous system, because this is so strong that it's the driver, right? So it's like, oh, but I'm what's going to happen? And, if that happened, then this could happen. And maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. And so this is spinning off so much and literally any of these exercises where we, if we can just find that way to stop, just pause. It's just I call it the art of interruption. Like when this is going off, can we just like, oh, right, one of those things. Oh yeah, what were they? Like, if, well, maybe I'll just look up in this moment. Just going straight to looking up is a good one because it's kind of a brain hack where it literally stops the thinking process or slows it down a lot. So even if you went to like, oh, my brain is freaking out right now, I'm just gonna look up for a couple of breaths here. And if I keep doing this, it's going to get harder to talk because it literally does have an impact on the brain. So that's a really cool brain hack for getting in. And if you want to slow the mind down and just refocus and regroup, just go straight to looking up for a couple of seconds, if that feels comfortable for you, and then just come back. Oh yeah, I'm here. Okay. All right. And you might need to do that a few times. Like if something's really thrown you off or rattled you, or it's a really high stress situation, you're coming out on the stage, or it's the first date, there's going to be a lot here. So, doing something like one of these exercises a few times, and that still might not even be 3 minutes, it's still pretty short, like to do this and look up and hang out, put your hand here, do it again. Doing a series of them can be hugely impactful in terms of refocus.
Hmm.
So, but, back to your piece, it's just about when you sense the mind is really going off, when you're really in fear. My suggestion is having one little default, one thing that you can do, like, wow, I'm really noticing this. I'm going to put my hand on my chest and I'm going to notice how it's going up and down. Or I'm just going to, go from right to left, play with them, play with these ones we're introducing and see what works for you. What do you like? Or can you stack them all up and do them all for a minute? Just some simple interventions. My book goes into more, but just in the moment ones, these ones are great.
I love these techniques, and I've used them. One I use often is looking around the room and looking up, either with my eyes closed or eyes open. And I realize as you're speaking about it, this being a little brain hack, I don't fully understand why it is that when I look up, it sort of creates a reset and almost calms me down or interrupts my train of thought. Is there more you could say about that?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly. I landed on one of those things once because I'd seen it and I was practicing it, and I'm like, I want to find out more. And probably one of those things I should have copied and pasted, but it literally has a way of the perception of the prefrontal cortex or something. It interrupts in a certain way when the eyes are doing something that literally just you can't think and see at the same time. When the eyes are up, something like that. It's just one of those crazy neuroscience things. And it also relates to the face too, the facial muscles. I think if you soften your facial muscles or put your awareness on them, and as soon as you do that, anything to do with the face as well also calms down the mind. So even just, you're going to meet someone, if you just consciously thought of, softening your face, maybe adding the smile, I could just feel my mind go still. I don't know. It's another cool little hack there. So because all of this is very much about, what's in front of you, who's in front of you as well. So the face and what we're facing, and where the eyes go, and eyes also have a deep, connection to the brain and to trauma as well. So they're really interesting little ways in make a difference.
I love these techniques because they can be used anywhere and everywhere. And that, in my world, speaking with people about relationships, a lot of people are dating. They're in the partner selection phase. They're wanting to learn more about their patterns and wanting to get clear about what it is that they really, really want in relationships. It's one thing actually a lot of people aren't clear about is what is their relationship vision. If they could wave a magic wand and create any kind of relationship, what would they create? And it's a really beautiful thought exploration. So working with people in that phase of their life, one of the things I teach them, and a couple of things we create in session, and I sometimes actually just assign it as homework, are written exercises that they can keep on their phone.
Mm.
Sometimes it's related to breakup recovery. Sometimes it's related to a mantra or a prayer or an affirmation or something that they can, say to themselves. Sometimes it's actually a concrete list of all the ways that they think that they are just a great person, all the ways that they think they're a valuable partner,
Mm.
all the things that they have to contribute, their unique gifts and talents. And if they're feeling nervous for a date, they can read that before they go in. They can certainly, use the techniques you're describing. They can go to the bathroom and have privacy. And so I love that sense of empowerment that, like, you just have your body and, a little moment to connect to yourself, and you don't need a yoga mat. You don't need a, magic wand or a
Mhm.
treadmill. And, you can just center yourself. It just takes the attunement and the practice and the remembering to try it and say, oh,
Mhm.
I've got this for myself.
Mhm. Yeah, I love
Um,
that. That's such a good point. And I love the word empowerment because I feel like that's what this was for me, is learning these things. It's just like, wow, I can do this myself. And there's a real shift away from sort of the practitioner or the therapist or the medication or the, big long meditation. And it's like, not that there's not a place for those, but I really found I was just craving things to help myself in the moment when I needed it. Right. So, and it's super empowering to go, wow, I just settled myself. I just calmed myself down. I can speak more clearly, I can show up, and be the person kind of more of who I want to be. And I did that myself. Right. So that's, I think it's just so really totally empowering and important. And I love your tools and suggestions that you have with people. And there's one, it's a cool way to embellish that as well. If you, something positive, say even the vision of yourself in a relationship, say, and you haven't been in one in a long time, and you've got the ideals and the feelings, as when you're looking at what you've written, take it to the body. So if you've written a thing about this a relationship that's engaging and connecting and deep and respectful, and you're sort of reading that, like when you read that and sense into those words, what do you notice inside? So, like, does your breath change? Do you feel more open and soft? Do you feel tingly with, are there tingles of excitement? So it's almost like taking that visual and taking it and making it really kinesthetic. So what is a felt sense of being deeply connected? So, so if you thought of a time in your life where you just had this, unconditional love for a grandma or a teacher or a dog, or whatever you can find, and think of that, the eyes, the warmth, the connection, and then, like, well, what do I actually feel? Like, what do I notice? Like, oh, my my gut let go, my shoulders drop, like it feels pink in my chest, those, that type of visceral thing. um, Literally what you're doing is rebuilding the neural pathways for the capacity to hold that. Right. So, when we say, if it's been a long time out of a relationship, or, or in terms of, anything that we're desiring or wanting, and we have been sort of in lack of it, there's big neural pathways of stress, perhaps trauma and fear, just that naturally would have, built up over time. And so what happens is we lose the neural pathways for the capacity for the other side of it, right? Because we just don't know it, and we haven't had a partner in years, so we don't know that felt sense anymore. So it's really important. Another important part of this work to build that, by having like the most epic daydreams ever. Just sit back, have the daydream. This can be a great meditation, where you imagine that person there beside you and how that feels, and so just staying with that expansion in the body, and literally, is there a color to the energy, is there a flow to that, imagining somebody beside you who's caring, and and just hang out there for as long as you can. And that builds your capacity to be able to hold that. And what most people will find somewhere along the lines as you'll get into your nice, like this nice feeling and expanse, and this is good around money and abundance and all that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden it'll be like, oh, wow, I just had that thought about that person that was mean to me, or I just, I started thinking about my bills I have to pay, or the tension comes in. So what happens is we literally, our nervous system is just kind of maxed out. So our nervous system has literally gone into a bit of a threat response. And so it's something that's really interesting to track, is like when we're going for the pleasure, the peace, the joy, the connection, and experiencing and putting our awareness on it, we can actually see where we time out too. And that's literally our nervous system going, whoop, that's enough of that. And so that's our window of tolerance, you might say, for that pleasure, the capacity for, what it is that we're dreaming of. And it might not be very long. Some people might only be able to spend a couple of seconds truly experiencing in their body that felt sense of something they desire. And then it's like, whoa, now I feel really uncomfortable. And so that's another one of those things to stay compassionately curious about. It's like, oh, that was interesting. I hung out there, it felt really good, had that, and then all of a sudden it changed. So not, being hard on ourselves, like, oh, I got that thought in my head again. Like, no, that's where we stay really curious about it. And so the more time that we do this in our own personal practice and our downtime, because there's no other way around this other than our conscious awareness and to this type of a practice to build this, really, especially when we're in such high stress and we're not getting that in, is to just like, okay, this is my time to sit and do it. And then just really be curious with tracking it. And over time, it does build. We can go from 2 seconds to maybe 10 seconds, or 10 seconds to maybe 30 seconds or a minute. And then that literally, that could be how small these titration this is into, this world of where we really want to go, of what we're dreaming.
Yeah, as you're speaking, I'm sort of perceiving it as like an upper limit in a way. We talk about vision
Yeah,
work, and
exactly the right one.
it's
Yeah.
something that exists in couples work as well.
Yeah.
Is this sense of upper limit. And I think individuals, whether we're speaking about specific romantic relationship or not, have upper limits by virtue of the fact that we have limiting beliefs. Maybe we have ideas about the world, or what we are capable of, or what is even possible, or what is available to us. And in the couples work that I facilitate, one of the things that is constantly reinforced is, reinforced isn't the right word, but encouraged, is a sense of curiosity and a sense of empathy. And I think that oftentimes, speaking of being in vigilance, the body sort of seeking safety, we kind of throw curiosity and empathy aside, right? Because it's like survival mode.
Oh yeah.
And relationships can be really, really challenging in that way, because it's easy to sort of be a Zen monk on our own. But as soon as the other person comes in, and then all the attachment stuff gets going, it can be a challenging place to exist. And I think dating, sort of like looking for a job and going for an interview, but even on a deeper level, it's just this anxiety-inducing experience. And a lot of the people that I work with feel that way. And so I wonder if you could speak to this a little bit about the attachment system and related to dating, or how early attachment might play a role for an individual in relationship.
Yeah, this is such a huge piece, and it's just so nice that all this information is coming out so we can help make sense of ourselves, right? And because when we talk about attachment, really the big stuff is early attachment, and what happens in our nervous system, or doesn't happen, to support our nervous system when we're super young. So this could be in utero, during birth, very early years, if what our needs are so primitive at that time, and if we're not getting what we need in terms of, like, literally that skin bonding, that soothing, that type of thing, it can turn up into the craziest stuff when we're older. And a lot of times we're never going to be able to put the pieces together to what it was. And we could spend a lot of money on therapy trying to figure that out. But just, even in a perfect world, there's still going to be times where, that there's going to be some attachment stuff from young that comes up to bite us. But it could look like the panic attack or the eating disorder, or, some very deep things, or just very little glitchy things where, we don't trust, or that kind of thing. And literally it's just a nervous system, trauma or the attachment pieces. It's like the nervous system is always kind of wanting to complete. So when something wasn't there, there's this sense in the nervous system of always trying to complete or find or want that. So it can, and that's where sort of the patterns can show up. And it's really literally a nervous system wanting to finish, wanting to complete. So whatever needed to happen at that time where there wasn't something there for us. Maybe the easiest way is in like a fall or a car accident or something like that, where we land and then we just get up right away because we're embarrassed or something like that. But so we don't get to complete that trauma response. So if we land hard and sit, our body will kind of shake, or, we might have emotions or tears that come, and then we will orient, and then maybe after a couple of minutes we'll get up, or and then so we've actually allowed ourselves to complete a little trauma response there. Something needs to happen for us to kind of right ourselves inside. And so on a much bigger scale, that can happen, whether it's shock trauma and also attachment trauma in a bit of a different way, but same idea. There's this, if it's interrupted in some form, or they're crying, or our needs aren't met, and they go on into a point where like a baby literally shuts down, and they think, oh, the baby's quiet now, that's good, but the baby's gone into an override shutdown in its nervous system. There's this sort of nervous system driver inside that's just constantly needing what seems like maybe an irrational need for that still existing in there. And it can just be something that pops up once in a while, or maybe we never notice, or it could be like this pervasive pattern or theme in our life. But what I find with the nervous system education is when I learned that, it just helped me have more compassion for myself. It's like, oh, okay. So if I thought of myself as the little baby, that had the need, or toddler or adolescent that, went through that, we tend to just like deep six all the stuff that went on when we were young, because we don't want to go there. We don't want to go back there, and we don't want to mess around. But, even if we just were to turn and just as an exercise, like, wow, no, I honor that. I honor what happened. And even what I don't know may have happened, it just, so perhaps this, the way the paranoia or the severe attachment or the loneliness, or the things that are showing up and patterns, the not trusting or committing, all those things, I can bring compassion to that for myself, because I'm just sending compassion back to that part of myself who went through stuff, right? So I can be a little bit more gentle and stay more curious as to what's showing up for me in the moment, right? So I feel like it softens it. So I feel like we can either be in battle with, the way that we are, like this pattern, this, I can't talk right, when I'm on a date, or, these things that we battle in ourselves and want to change and fix or get rid of, or we can stay compassionate and curious about them. And when we're in battle, we'll never win, because we're never going to win against this nervous system, or, those parts of ourselves that, we're lacking in something. They will, like, it's just like meeting fire with fire, right? And then you end up with an explosion. But if you can stay soft and stay, watery and, just more open or in the flow with that fire, when it comes, it just kind of eases that fire, right? Like we're not going to increase it. So staying compassionately curious about the patterns, about, our emotions in the moment, and even in the big picture with the world that it is right now, like just being completely off and miserable and not able to do anything is so okay right now. It really is. There's a lot going on out there. So, that whole sense of just like a different angle on compassion, I feel like, in a way.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful message. In there, you're describing a moment where an individual might be, maybe let's say on a date, and they're sitting at the restaurant, and you're talking about this experience of fighting the system, fire with fire, kind of
Right.
overriding really what's going on instead of honoring it, having compassion and curiosity for it. And that seems to me like an invalidation in a way of kind of what we're feeling, which is something that I notice people are taught and learn how to do, which is to question their feelings, to even invalidate themselves or judge or shame themselves. And sometimes it's learned. I mean, parents are imperfect and well-intentioned, but sometimes it's learned from the family system. Often these things are where, a parent might say, don't cry, or, you shouldn't be upset, or I don't know why you feel that way, or don't worry about it.
Mhm.
And we don't learn to question them, our environment, the system, the authority. We learn to question ourselves. And so many people that I work with do have an experience of that, of not trusting their gut or acting on it. And as Gabor Mate would say, it's sort of like an attachment over authenticity. And there is this misattunement, sense of being out of alignment and confused, right? Really.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think it's just a beautiful message, that sense of, okay, coming back to myself and having compassion for the way that I'm feeling and being curious about what's going on here, because I feel like really unsafe and really like things are out of control.
Mhm.
And the beautiful thing about that for someone that's dating is if they can learn how to do that for themselves, they can bring that practice into their partnership, into their relationship.
Mhm. Mhm.
And, with that understanding and that knowing and that practice, I think people have a much better shot at going the distance, not just staying committed and together, but actually enjoying the experience and having a sense of expression, adventure,
Mhm.
play, creativity, some of the things that uh, you are also an advocate of, uh,
Mhm.
having fun.
Well, and there was just something you said there that reminded me of a piece that I feel is really important too. Is a lot of time when we are in relationship, oftentimes we can want something for our partner. Like we just know for sure they'd do better if they, drank more water, saw a therapist, or all of those things. Or and and so when it's really interesting to notice where our power is. So like that, where instead of being in ourselves, we're in someone else, right? So it's kind of a boundary thing there, but it's also very much a nervous system thing as well. So it means that we are not in ourselves when we're really in somebody else. So even just seeing it as that, like if we're like, oh gosh, I wish I, and when, and if someone that we love is in a compromised situation, it's also compassion and empathy, but there's kind of a fine line, right? Where I feel like, in that moment when we want so much for that person, that is truly the time where we, take a time out and go into ourselves. Because that is the biggest thing we can offer that person is our regulation and our just attunement and our calm, our breath. Because most of the time, they're on their journey, right? So truly the biggest gift, whether it's, as a, a facilitator or a practitioner or just in a relationship, is just offering, the best of ourselves in that way. So our own, like, wow, I've just looked around the room and felt my breath. So I'm more here than I was a minute ago. So even if somebody with you, say in a high state of stress, you can be doing that, like subtly, you know, doing an exercise and bringing yourself back. And that nervous system will feel this nervous system, right? And so, you give a gift of healing and of presence to somebody in that way. And it's amazing what can happen there when we can just hang out in our own presence and being more embodied. So I'm more in me. How do I know that? Because I can feel my chest going up and down, and I can feel my butt in the chair. So even though, my partner is having a difficult time, I can flex my quads and feel that I'm sitting here, hold on to my leg, and just be here. And then all of a sudden, it's not about thinking about the right thing to say. It's just about, that's where the true empathy can come from. It's just like, wow, I'm just here, and feel me, right? And so you're allowing that for them. And that always goes back to such a big thing that I believe in is, the way to helping others heal is to heal yourself, truly. So if you want your partner to get therapy, go to therapy, truly. Because when you work on yourself, and then when you find the right support for yourself and do these practices yourself, they will change, right? So the two pain bodies, as Eckhart Tolle describes them, this nervous system and that nervous system that kind of go like that for, which is what we do in relationship and family patterns. We're just locked in. If one of you can kind of get out of that tennis game, right? And just change it up so that we're not locked into that pattern, literally by working on the nervous system, by just creating, more calm, more embodiment, less vigilance, and being able to settle, then this can't engage in the same way, right? So all of a sudden, this whole potential around relationship has different possibilities, right? So it's a really good one to think of, because and again, ultimately we can't change that person, but it's a different way of thinking about why ultimately we want to just be working with ourselves, right? And not even for that person's, but just truly for ourselves, because when we are that present embodied person, then we have so much to offer, and to our planet as well.
Yeah, one thing I'm visualizing from what you just said is that sort of tennis match or the ping pong match. And
Yeah.
sometimes it looks like, you're an asshole, you never do anything. Yeah, well, it's your fault and you're to blame, the back and forth.
Exactly.
And it's so easy to blame another for the state of the relationship, some sort of in the way that people blame the authority or the figurehead or the elected power for the state of things. They're to blame for everything, versus taking responsibility for ourself and our emotions and what is happening. Take responsibility to communicate our needs, communicate about what is just happening, how we're feeling in a given moment. It strikes me as interesting that we let, physically in the act of sex, for a woman, in a heterosexual sense, the man is literally let inside of them in their physical body. They're doing the most intimate physical thing, but we don't let people into our emotional experience. We don't let people into our inner world. And it's sort of normalized, and it creates a lot of challenges for people, because they actually almost rob themselves of the experience of getting the thing that they want, which is a connection, acceptance, love for who I really authentically am, and to be held with a sense of compassion for who that is, not who I pretend to be, or to be accepted for the person that just holding it all together, white knuckling it. And with the attacking and blaming that comes from that power struggle in relationship, I want you to be more like me, is a state of vigilance, right? Because then you get into now it's not safe, and now I've got to defend myself, or I've got to pull away, or it can be extremely complicated and confusing.
And that's where the high level of self-compassion is so necessary. Because if you're just like, oh, I did it again, like, I'm back there again, like this, what's going on in the nervous system is so strong. It can be so strong in where, what it relates to in terms of, trauma or, whatever has happened, those patterns, that, any type of, wow, I need to figure this out, I need to do better, whatever, like, it's just, we just have to be so tender in those places, we really, really do. And, because the thoughts are going to come, say, after an exchange or something like that, or while we're in it. And that's just really about just like, I think we are all doing the best job that we can with the nervous systems that we have, and from what our nervous systems have experienced. So in every moment, and, to the extent of my healing today, this is, where my nervous system is at. So I'm, doing the best job that I can. With its limitations, right? And I don't like the word like disability, but just using that sense of like, when we've been through a lot, there's a lot that's gone on in here, right? So I mean, if we'd lost an arm or something like that, it would be pretty obvious that there are challenges here, and life is different for that person, or if you're in a wheelchair, whatever. But when we've been through a lot emotionally, and trauma wise, whether what we know about or don't know about, all of this is going on, which also causes health issues, and which just causes back pain and migraines and digestion problems and all of that. And we can be carrying these enormous loads of stress and anxiety, and then all the physical symptoms that go with that, and just be expected to just go out there and carry on and keep on performing, right? So people with high levels of PTSD, or the various things that come from that, and I would say all our immune diseases, I mean, basically anything that's going on with the body is going to relate to something emotionally. It just does. So except for maybe in some rare occasions, but if we just are open to being curious at it that way, I think that's an interesting perspective sometimes, where we really almost need to go back to that. It was like, wow, that was a lot. So if I've truly been through all that, then, and it was like this big, I need that much compassion for myself. And because no one, when they look at me, would be able to tell, they're not going to know, right? But I might have struggles with my job, keeping a job, even being able to, show up to work every day. I might have struggles completing, tasks or assignments, or, trauma affects the brain in a huge way. So the ADD, ADHD thinking and dyslexia, all those types of things, like that's a brain, that's out of balance, right? Due to, who knows, various causes. So I think it's, for me, this big message about just being so gentle and kind to ourselves, because then you add to all of that everything that's going on in the world now, right? So so it's a lot. So, and I think it's the big education these days is just so much more compassion towards ourselves as humans, trying to make our way through this existence. There's a lot of fear out there, and so it's coming out in different ways. So somebody who's been through a lot and they see this world this way, can go into terror, right? That makes no sense to them, but they're just terrified, and they're not even leaving the house. And then you have other people's fear that goes completely the other way. So they're the ones like, say that forget the mask and I'm going out there, but I'm going to do this, but inside there's still a lot going on. It has a very different presentation. Their nervous system is running a whole different operating system than the other person, but they're all in a way sort of reacting to what's going on out there in the world, right? And so that's why having compassion for all sides of what's coming at you as much as you possibly can, because there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of craziness going on, but again, everyone's got their own operating system they're running from, right? And yeah, it's pretty intense right now.
When there's a couple things I'm thinking. One is that this conversation is relevant, to maybe coronavirus, but if someone watches this video in 10 years, it will still be relevant to, normal life or whatever's happening at the time. And in my experience this year, going to the grocery store has been one of the most fascinating experiences to sort of plug into this conversation where I walk in and I'm thinking about, okay, I got to put on my mask and I'm going to get a cart and make sure it's wiped down or someone's wiped it down. And then mind my space and maybe let the older guy go first and give him some room, more so than you normally would. And the way that people treat each other is a certain level of agitation, frustration, almost this myopic kind of like tunnel vision. And it's become, I think, less so now as intense. But when this first got started, man, you could just feel the silence and the sense of tension in the grocery store.
Yeah.
This place where we all need to get our food and our nourishment, and just feed ourselves, take care of ourselves, make sure we have enough, and take care of the kids or whoever else is in the home. And I think a lot of what we've talked about here and these techniques would be useful in that circumstance. But my point is that you can see that everything kind of manifesting in an environment like that, people cutting each other off and not thinking about the other and not having any curiosity about, oh, wow, I'm feeling really, wow, so worked up right now. I didn't even realize I was so outside myself.
No, and most people won't be there and will never get there. But it doesn't, on the other side, I keep seeing this analogy for myself as well. Like, there isn't dark without light, so just really in my low moments, just focusing on what is simply and purely the other side, like a tree, like I've just been doing a lot of tree explorations lately. Like, no matter what's going on in this world and all the craziness out there, that tree is still just standing there, being a tree, shedding, growing, bending, and everything's going on around it, so I'm just my meditation visualization these days for myself is just very much about just going in deep enough to find the trunk of that tree around me, especially when there's a lot of people and a lot of distress, and finding that in me, and I'll use that by so grabbing my legs. When we're stressed, sensation's always up here, and the constriction and everything tends to be, the activation is upper body, so making that connection to lower body. And so that those tree roots deep in the earth by connecting with my legs, and I'll just do something super simple like that, and me changing, being tree and being that higher being of light or white, on the other side, which is going on all around us, that we're really, when we're that activated, we lose sight of. So we're really losing sight of everything that's good right now. There's lots going on that's good. People doing amazing things. There's most of this world is still okay. There's still wild animals. There's still water. There's still, it's not like it was, but focusing on what is positive, just even for a moment, just to get that, the trees, it's still there. There's still a tree. So just going to the other side, and so then going into the store, being the tree, so could you just observe, wow, that person's freaking out, wow, that person's eyes look so stressed, wow, I'm just the tree, it's just going on, those people just smash their carts into each other and they're yelling, wow, I'm just the tree, and I'm just going to go, I'm sending my tree love, and I'm going to go on the line and just be a tree in the line, and that ripple effect, right? Like, it actually does make a difference, because we're all energy, right? So.
You said a lot of really brilliant stuff in this conversation, but one thing that I will take away for sure is this distinction about whether I am within myself right now, or whether I am in you, or I'm trying to be in your mind, or I'm in your feelings, or I'm projecting about what's going on with you or another person. And that strikes me as an experience that everyone has, of maybe trying to understand more, or just thinking about what you're thinking, and not necessarily coming back to themselves. I think to me, in my experience, that is a rare quality to develop, is the awareness, attunement to, oh, where is my mind? And am I in them or am I in me? You know, because right there you sort of, oh, okay, I'm here. Okay. Oh, I'm okay. You know, that thing that we kind of learned early on, like, hey, it's okay if there's a kind of healthy co-regulation. It's okay to explore. It's okay to be you. You know, it's okay to have opinions. Uh, and I think that in some of the work that I'm doing, you know, it's part of the reparenting journey that maybe we're all on, but that people go through, is that, oh, yeah, it's safe to be who I am, and it's safe to be here, and to, you know, cultivate that and strengthen that sense of attunement. So thank you for that. Uh, Hopefully some people have made it this far in our conversation to take that with them.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been talking for an hour. I want to be mindful of both of our time and wrap this up. Maybe in the future we'll have another conversation. But before we do that, is there anywhere online that people can find you? We mentioned your book, Thriving in Chaos, which is, I'm sure it's available at all the digital retailers, at least Amazon or local bookstore. Maybe if there's anything specific you want to mention, I'll give you a moment to do that.
You can find me at sandydow.com, and there's a link to my book there. I also have a free download of 10 of my top tips, you know, somatic based tips like this that you can just quickly take and look at and implement, a few more than we've touched on here today. And yeah, it's just kind of a gift that I've put out for people. So I'm out there a little bit on social media, but I'm kind of more in other places, so not so much there. But yeah, I'm on Instagram and on Facebook at the Dow Effect, so you can find me there.
Okay, very cool. Well, thank you for making time to be here today. I appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to sharing this conversation with others who, you know, can learn something from this as well. Put it up on all the channels, right? So thank you. And hopefully we'll chat again soon.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a gift to be here. Bye for now, and we'll chat again.
Okay. Thanks, Sandy.